Matt Harrison, he's the lead biotech analyst at Morgan Stanley and a guy whose team has been working tirelessly and putting out, Matt, I don't say this to every guest because I wouldn't mean it, some of the most amazing work I have seen. Appreciate you joining us in a first ever on CNBC interview. Before we get to the companies on the vaccine fight, you guys have been spot on with your projections about the number of cases, both globally, nationally, on a state-by-state basis. What are your projections right now for peak cases in the United States?
Good morning, Brian. Thanks for having me. So our current projections are about 2 million cases in the U.S. That's been slowly creeping up over the past couple of weeks as the U.S. has increased testing, and we started to see some states open up, which has naturally seen a small inflection in new cases.
You know, and we look at the number of new cases in the, quote, reopened states. I've been tracking it myself. We don't have a lot of data, and it's early, but has there been any indication, Matt, of how these reopened states, like a Wisconsin, which then had its lockdown order reversed by the Supreme Court, have they seen a spike in new cases? Any indication that they are doing disproportionately worse than the states like New Jersey, where you and I are, that are still on primarily a lockdown?
Yeah, currently we're not seeing a spike, though you wouldn't expect to see a spike until about 3 to 6 weeks after these states reopen. I think the thing to note about many of the reopening, not all, but many of the reopening states, is that unlike, say, European and Asian countries, which waited for the number of new virus cases to get to a nadir or a trough, a lot of the reopening states have reopened at a point where maybe they're just slightly off the peak in number of new cases. So people are watching closely because the risk potentially there is a bit higher to see a spike given how they've reopened.
You know, you've got the 2 million projection. We're at 1.5 million, and I'm not making light of the other 500,000 if you and your team are correct, but it does seem like maybe we're in the 6th or 7th inning, at least in this round. Would you agree with that? And how confident or not confident are you in this idea of a fall resurgence?
It's a good question. I think understanding when a second wave comes is one of the key factors that I've been asked a lot about from investors. I would agree that the most likely time period is the fall. Typical coronaviruses are pretty seasonal. The difference is when you've seen a jump from animals to humans for the first time and there isn't a lot of immunity, those viruses tend not to be very seasonal. So you have this issue where we're going to have to watch this summer and see what happens. But I think the likelihood is you see a more resurgence in the fall.
Are you optimistic that we will get a vaccine?
I am. We've talked about spring to summer of 2021 as when we would expect to see the vast majority of the U.S. population vaccinated.
And who is the company or companies that are most likely to win that fight in the search for a vaccine, Matt?
Yep, it's a good question. There are about 110 vaccines that have been identified, whether in preclinical or clinical development. We put out a report on Sunday where we highlighted 6 of them. Our criteria were both where we viewed higher probability of clinical success, but also coupled with the ability to produce the vaccine at scale. Our thought is, unless you can get to significant amounts of doses, that the usefulness will be more mixed. So the companies that we highlighted in that are Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, who's partnered with the Jenner Institute, who Meg mentioned earlier, but they're moving ahead quickly. A Chinese company called CanSino, and then Glaxo and Sanofi, who are partnered together.
You know, and obviously you saw it. And by the way, you raised your price target to $90 on Moderna, so you're bullish there, Matt. But you probably saw the news yesterday. Some people saying, some vaccine experts, they're not happy with the amount of information that Moderna provided. Are you happy with what you've seen from Moderna so far?
I think the thing that I focus on is that they have a correlation between the key pieces that I'm interested in, which is neutralizing antibodies, binding antibodies, and the ability to elicit neutralizing antibodies in a mouse model, which was correlated with their neutralizing antibodies that they demonstrated. Look, we're always going to want more data in an early study. The numbers are small, and so while I viewed the data as encouraging, I think the thing I'm looking for next is we would expect the NIAID, who has partnered with Moderna on this early study, to publish those results sometime before they start phase 3 in July, and I think that's when we'll get to see all the details.
And then they would be able to, I would assume, scale it so that everybody could get a dose by when, Matthew?
Yeah, so currently what they've said is they could have millions of doses available in the fall, tens of millions of doses by the end of 2020, and be on a billion dose per year run rate by the middle of 2021.